Hello, friends. It has been a long time, and I've put in a lot of work to get back to painting, and so I'm excited to welcome you to Series 2, Episode 1 of Becoming Bob. Today, I'll be painting along with The Joy of Painting featuring Bob Ross, Series 2, Episode 1, which is titled Meadow Lake. This painting features a blue sky with fluffy white clouds, an almighty mountain, grassy hills covered with evergreens, and nice fall foliage along the shores of a pristine lake. I've made some improvements to my process, and I hope you'll join me now as I embark on the second leg of my journey to paint along with Bob for all 403 episodes of The Joy of Painting. Before I do, if you're new to the channel, make sure to go back and watch me paint my way through Series 1. And if you like what I'm doing, consider subscribing. I have a long road ahead of me, and I'd love for you to join me. So come along now, friends, and let's get painting. It feels so good to get back to painting. But before I start, let's go over the colors I'll be using in this and probably most of the paintings in this series. Titanium white, phthalo green, phthalo blue, Prussian blue, burnt umber, Van Dyke brown, alizarin crimson, sap green, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow, and permanent red. Now, I didn't do any prep work to this canvas beforehand. Since this is the first episode in the second series, Bob is covering some of the basic stuff, and he's starting with putting the liquid white on the canvas. Now, I've had some practice with this in Series 1, and so I've developed a little bit of a technique, you could say. Just trying to get it evenly spread on there. Going back to get a little bit more. You definitely want to have a layer of liquid white on the canvas, but you don't want it to be too thick. You can see I kind of daub it around before starting to spread it. That kind of helps it to get a little bit more evenly distributed on the canvas. Some back and forth stuff there. A little up and down. Just trying to get it all as even as possible. See, I kind of had a concentration of it up in the left side and towards the top, so I was trying to kind of pull it down as much as I could. Now we're going into our paint thinner there, and that is odorless paint thinner. Since I'm doing this inside, I wanted something that's not going to make the whole house smell terrible. And beat the devil out of it. Next I'm going into some phthalo blue there, and this is kind of exciting because this is the first time I've used phthalo blue. There's 4 new colors this time. Phthalo blue, burnt umber, the Indian yellow, and of course the classic yellow ochre. Just making some crisscrosses up in the sky there. Just trying to get it spread out, but not be completely even. And one thing I do want to mention is Bob kind of had a happy little accident at the start of his painting. When he goes to get the phthalo blue for the sky, he actually calls it Prussian blue. I'm not critiquing Bob, but I just wanted to mention it because it kind of helped me to get over some of the mental blocks that have been holding me back from getting back to painting. No one's perfect. No one's expecting perfection. It's just important to remember sometimes. Got a little hair there. trying to even it out, but not even it out too much, and trying to pull it down on the canvas to at least halfway so that I don't end up with a white space in the middle of the painting. Now with my fan brush, I'm going into some titanium white, really trying to load that brush up, and go in and use the corner of the brush to start putting in some nice fluffy clouds. Just doing little swirls there. And I'm picking up some liquid white, kind of to help thin out that titanium white. That's the same titanium white that I was using in Series 1, and it has dried out a little bit. And adding a little bit of liquid white really helped to get it to transfer onto the canvas there. Still, I feel like it could have been a little softer, and these clouds could have ended up being a little fluffier and wider, but that's okay. Got my 2-inch brush back out there, and I'm just kind of going in with the corner and doing little swirls and kind of trying to fluff up the clouds a little bit. The clouds ended up being pretty wispy, but they're still there. I'm pretty happy overall with how the sky turned out. Cleaning off my 2-inch brush again there. Just going into that odorless paint thinner. Then I shake it off in a bucket with a trash bag in it. And then on the leg of the easel there, I just beat the devil out. Now with my palette knife, I'm grabbing some Prussian blue, some Van Dyke brown, and alizarin crimson, and mixing that together to make a really dark color, almost black, to serve as the base color for some almighty mountains. Now Bob's my teacher, but he had a teacher before him, and he learned a lot from watching Bill Alexander paint on PBS. And Bob dedicated this episode to Bill, and I just think it's great to hear that Bob, started out kind of the same way I am. It's really motivational. 2-inch brush there, just kind of trying to pull that mountain out. Add that nice natural slope into it. Trying to follow what that slope would be. And I'm also trying to pull it out pretty far to the left and to the right. Just remembering back to Series 1, I remember that you want to kind of pull those mountains down and make sure that they're covering a decent area so that they don't end up looking like they're floating in the clouds. Now, I was saying Bob goes over the basics, a lot of the basics here. He mentions that you should use a stretched canvas and not canvas board, because otherwise the paints don't react right and you don't get the same kind of effects. For the easel, you need something sturdy and strong to handle some of the real physical painting that goes on in this technique. You have to have a palette that's large enough to hold all the colors, but also give you space to mix colors and make new ones. You have to have brushes with natural bristles that can hold up to the physical nature of this painting. And you need a nice, strong, and large palette knife to really move the paint around and let you mix it. And I'm using that palette knife now to put some liquid white, titanium white, and a little bit of that Prussian blue mixed in to create the snowy, brighter side of the mountains there. And now I picked up a little bit more of the Prussian blue to darken it up and add in some highlights on the shadow side of the slopes. One of the things I really wanted to do for this series was to play Bob's paintings at 75% speed. I did that for episode 13 in series 1, and I felt like it really helped me to kind of relax more. It made it easier to keep up with him, and I ended up with a better product in the end. So I wanted to do that for all the episodes of this series. Unfortunately, when I was getting everything set up for this painting, I didn't realize it at the time, but I wasn't going to be able to play the video on the device I was playing it on and slow the speed down. By the time I figured that out, I was, ready to paint. I had my momentum going, so I just, went ahead and did it at normal speed. And I did find that I was kind of struggling to keep up, and I think that I may have missed a few of the steps that Bob did as a result. But I can always try next time to figure out a better way to play that video on the TV, which will let me slow it down to 75%. Got my 2-inch brush there. I've loaded it up with some sap green, and I'm really pressing that into the canvas to create a nice grassy slope there. Trying to create a good natural looking slope and provide some good coverage all along the bottom there. I'm trying to kind of close the gap between the green part and the mountain, but you can see I don't quite cover up all that white, and that kind of shows it, in the end painting. But I'm still learning. So when you're really doing this, when you're putting in a lot of color in a large area like this, especially, when you're using the 2-inch brush like this, it's really more like a stamp than it is a brush. You can see I'm kind of pushing it in. It's bending those bristles. And kind of putting that same grassy looking stamp everywhere I press. I picked up a little bit of Prussian blue there to kind of darken things up a bit in the foreground. My knife back out there, picking up some Prussian blue, some Van Dyke brown, some sap green, and mixing that together now to make a nice dark green color. Now the tools I have out for this episode are kind of limited. I didn't need nearly as many brushes as I have for some of the paintings. I've got 2 2-inch brushes out. I only used one of them though for this. I've got 2 1-inch brushes, and I've got the fan brush there, and of course the palette knife. Now one thing I didn't have out that I needed to have out was the script liner, and you'll see that later, that I have to get that. Going in now with that fan brush and making some nice happy little trees. Classic zigzag technique, using the corner to kind of press in there and going back and forth to kind of form the boughs of the tree. You can hear that dinging in the background. I try to get rid of all the background noises if possible when I'm doing these paintings, so that you can really hear the sound of my painting. But unfortunately, it's sometimes difficult to catch everything. In that case, that was our dryer dinging at us. I had paused it in its cycle, but it just has to remind you, I guess. Now, I will mention this is the first time that I've actually done the voiceover while at the same time hearing the video of me painting. For all of Series 1, I never had any sort of sound because I didn't want to mess up the audio recording for the voiceover. But for Series 2, I've upgraded my microphone quite a bit, and that not only gives me the ability to record a higher quality voiceover, but it also gives me the ability to listen to myself paint and to myself recording the voiceover at the same time in real time. You can see I've got the 1-inch brush out now, and I've picked up some liquid white and some cadmium yellow at this point. We're adding in some highlights, adding some shrubs with some bright yellow leaves there. Doing my best to kind of turn the paintbrush as I'm stamping it to get different kinds of shapes, because you don't want everything to be uniform in this painting or it just doesn't look natural. Just scratching in a few little twigs and branches. And loading up with some more green paint. Darkening it up with some Prussian blue and some Van Dyke brown. And I'm going to put some more nice big evergreen trees in here. Just trying to work that brush back and forth. Pressing it in the way I do kind of gives it a nice downward curve that makes the trees look a lot more natural, like they're weighted down by their own branches. You see I've got some gaps kind of in there between the boughs, and I go back in to fill that in here. Probably didn't need to fill it in as much as I do, because I am going to go in here and put in some trunks for those trees, but first I've got my 1-inch brush out there, and we're putting on some more deciduous trees. Just adding in the dark shadowy bits now. Just filling in those spaces on either side of the painting. And you can see it kind of angles off, giving that illusion of depth. Now with the palette knife again, picking up some just straight up Van Dyke brown. And just with the edge, just barely touching it to the canvas. Adding in some hints of some branches and trunks in there for those trees. Oop, just getting a hair off of there. My goal is not to add, the entirety of the trees, branches and trunks and everything, but just to kind of give a hint that it's in there. Trying to keep it looking natural. Going into some Indian yellow there. Or actually, that's yellow ochre. My first time using it. Giving some different foliage colors, which is nice. Adds a lot more depth and interest to the painting than just using the cadmium yellow and permanent red. Mixtures of those two. This brings in a lot more tones and just creates a lot more variation, which is what you see in nature. Now, there are 4 new colors that I've got this series. I've got the phthalo blue, the burnt umber, the yellow ochre and Indian yellow. And I had a hard time finding the burnt umber in the normal landscape type paint. I just don't know if they just don't produce it anymore or what, but I was only able to find it in kind of the soft wildlife series of paints, but I feel like it worked pretty good here. See, I've got my 2-inch brush now, and I'm pulling straight down in the foreground and turning it into a nice, beautiful lake. And choosing where the edge of that water will be by where I start my pulling down. You can just see those reflections forming. Now just a little bit of extra Prussian blue in there. Kind of give the water a little bit more depth. Picking up some liquid white. Just getting it a little bit on the edge of it. Cutting in that water line. Personally, I feel like this is the step that really makes the water look like water, because it provides the separation between the water and the dry land. And for me, that's an important part of the illusion. And speaking of dry land, picking up just a little bit of Van Dyke brown in there, mixed with some liquid white and a little glycerin crimson. We're going to put in a little sandy bank here, just along the edge there, somewhere for the animals to come out and have a little drink. And just a bit more of that there. Yeah, I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but one of the things I'm trying to avoid this series is trying to not let myself get held back by things not being perfect. It's too easy to tell yourself you're not ready because, not every bit of lighting is perfect. Not every bit of camera work is perfect. Because you're not in the perfect mood, or, the timing isn't perfect, whatever. These kind of things were holding me back for a long time in getting to Series 2. I want to produce a really high quality, videos for people, and, I want to do a good job on the paintings too, of course. But sometimes you just kind of have to get over yourself and just do it. So that's what I'm trying to do this series, is not let myself get held back as much. And so you may notice some imperfections here and there, like the random sound effects in the background there while I'm painting. And I don't know if you can hear what's going on while I'm recording this voiceover, but the trash truck just came through and was making quite a bit of noise. But it's all good. It's okay. It's not the kind of stuff that I think should stand in the way of the painting. You see, I've added some land in the foreground there. Now I'm going in and kind of spicing it up a bit with some bright pops of fall foliage there. Really trying to think about how I'm holding the brush to create that variation in the leaves and the way the plants are just structured. Now, when it comes to, this painting, the thing that I'm happiest with about this painting is, and you can't really see it very well on here, but there's one red shrub, I guess you'd call it, that's kind of on the far side of the pond from us there. And just between the scratching with the blade, you can see it there on the right side, and the color mixing and just the way it went on to the canvas, I'm just really happy with how that one turned out. It just looks so good. What I'm not as happy with, and what I think could use some improvement, is that white misty area between the tops of the trees and the bottom of the mountain. I think if I'd brought the mountain down a little bit more and brought the trees up a little bit more, it would have filled that area in and looked a lot more natural. I think now it kind of does look like the mountains kind of floating up there in the sky, but we're still working on it. Just scratching in some more details there. Now, by this point, Bob was done painting. The episode was over, and I'm just playing catch up and putting in the final finishing touches. Since I'm not rushing to try and keep up anymore, I'm taking my time, really doing my best to kind of put those in the spots I think would look the most natural. And I'm pretty happy with it at this point. But now I've realized that I don't have my script liner. So if you'll excuse me for just a moment, I'll be right back. While I'm doing that, I can see that the camera angle we're at here has really kind of brightened up a lot. I thought I had the camera settings set to not do that, so I apologize for the changes in brightness from this camera angle. There's a lot of things you have to do when you're getting ready to paint, and sometimes you miss some steps. I've created a document, I guess you'd call it, that kind of has all the steps written down in it. It's very long, and even with that, I feel like I may miss a few things here and there. Got some linseed oil on the brush, and I ran it through the permanent red. Tried to really get a nice tight tip on that brush, and I'm just signing my name there. And with that, the painting's complete. Thank you for joining me for episode 1 of series 2. It's great to be back at painting, and it feels so good to do this. I hope you'll join me in this journey by clicking subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in episode 2. Well, goodbye for now, friends.